Blog Talk Radio.
Oh, it's time to get real. Oh, yeah. It's a new experience. Reality, spirituality. Yeah, keep your ears open for this one now. Reality, spirituality. You got a question for RLN? Reality, spirituality. Yeah, it's time to get some answers, baby. Reality, spirituality. Oh, now we getting real. Getting real. Reality, spirituality. Yeah, it's time to get down. Reality, spirituality. Yeah, you gonna feel good now. Real good. Now, that's what I'm talking about. Time to get real.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Reality Spirituality. I'm your host, Rebecca L. Norrington, Global Happiness Specialist. You know the drill. Inner Peace Practitioner, but most importantly, a student of the universe and all of its laws. And today we have a special guest, John Davis. But before I introduce you to John Davis, I want just to share with some new listeners, because people are finding me organically. And I just want to say welcome to the show. Put your seatbelts on, because you may be triggered. Your buttons may be pushed. You know me. When I talk about happiness, who the hell does she think she is, a happiness specialist? Well, when I say happiness, I'm really focusing in on an internal, a personal vibration, a personal energy of contentment and of peace. And the good news is, my dear listeners, is that this happiness, this energy of contentment is a practiced skill. So that means it's just like a painter, an artist, an athlete, a musician, a landscaper, a chef. It is a practice skill. And so the more you practice, the easier it becomes to experience this thing we call happiness in this journey. And let me just give you my definition, share my definition. The happiness is the ability to vibrate an energy of inner peace, regardless of what happens, regardless of the world throws at you, regardless of the ups and downs of life, the ability to vibrate an energy of contentment regardless of what happens and regardless of what doesn't happen. So when I say happiness is a practice skill, what do you practice? Well, thanks for asking. You practice eliminating all the programmed behaviors, and I'm up to 55 of them. And in fact, it's out now on Amazon. Look at that. Programmed for Unhappiness. And you can find it on Amazon, soon to be Barnes & Noble, Kindle, Lulu. It's been, over 5 years of working on this. And then I also want to share with you that there's a very famous study. You can Google it. It's called The 5 Most Common Regrets of the Dying. And just coincidentally, we have a guest who actually died. The 5 Most Common Regrets of the Dying. And it was done by a hospice nurse. And her patients had days to live, weeks to live, months to live. And she asked them, what are your 5 biggest regrets? And these 5 kept coming back. These 5 kept coming up over and over and over again. Let me ask my guest, John, would you be interested in knowing what the 5 most common regrets of the dying are?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I would love to hear that.
The first is, I wish I would have pursued my... Are you still with me?
Yeah, I'm still there. I lost you for a few minutes.
Now, if whatever you lose it, then you just come back on. But okay. The first is, I wish I would have pursued, one of these days I'm going to have a cough button. I wish I would have pursued my dreams and aspirations and not the life others expected of me. Number 2, I wish I didn't work so hard. Number 3, I wish I had the courage to express my feelings and speak my mind. Number 4, I wish I would have stayed in touch with my friends. Now, I always put an asterisk by this one because sometimes we just outgrow people. Nothing wrong with them, nothing wrong with me, nothing wrong with you. It's just time not time, but we just outgrow people, period. And then the last one is, I wish I would have let myself be happier. And that's where I come in, sharing with the audience, and I've been doing this for 45 years, sharing with the audience how to practice this thing called happiness. And when I say 55 program behaviors, I'm going to ask my guest, John, do you worry?
All the time. It's something that I really struggle with. I've always worried. Okay.
Well, wow. My mouth popped open, and that's going to be another question that I'm going to have for you. When I saw you on YouTube, just your story was so interesting. But now you're human again. So let me share with you. There's only 2 reasons why people worry. The first one is it is a program. You didn't pop out of the womb knowing how to worry.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2, lack of trust. You can't trust and worry at the same time, so choose one.
Yeah, like worry becomes a habit.
Not becomes a habit, it's an addiction. It gets to the point where I say it's an addiction, just like complaining is addiction or fear. And so when I say an addiction, it is, if I said, and you already know that worrying isn't healthy or good for you, or even the people you worry about, correct? So if I said, snap my fingers, you're going to stop worrying. Part of the worrying, the programming is this worrying becomes part of your identity. And so that would be just like me saying, well, cut off your right arm. And so it's the practice. And getting back to this happiness, I've been doing this for so long, and when I ask people if they want to be happier, and again, it's an energy of contentment. When I ask people if they want to have more contentment or happiness, and they're like, everybody's raising a hand, me. Now I have a solution to all of your problems, all of your challenges, all of the roadblocks for the rest of your life. Do you want to know what that is, my dear guest?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Hold on, I'll get it for you. Hold on.
There you go.
And see, how many program people are rushing to look in the mirror to find solutions for their unhappiness? It's always pointed out there. It's the circumstances, it's the stories, it's the events. No, everything starts from within. And not a lot of people. I've been teaching classes in California California, Oregon, and now I'm in Las Vegas, the truth about happiness. And so what I found is, because it is so uncomfortable, because it is so painful, because not a lot of people want to run to the mirror. However, not to plug, because I'm not one to market or anything, this book will help. Program for Unhappiness, Exposing the Untold Truth. Things that people don't talk about, this whole idea of success. And what is success? Well, we all know that success has nothing to do with your accomplishments. It is. Ask Will Smith. In fact, he was interviewed in a November GQ magazine, and he said, I have everything. This was before the infamous slap. He said, I have everything. I have money, I have connections, I have fame. At that time, he said, loving family, but I'm not happy. So this happiness, when I say happiness, again, it is a personal vibration, is a practice. However, it's not an easy practice. Make sense?
Agreed. Yep, absolutely.
And it depends, and we have people. Now, if you're listening to me live, you can call. Oh, I have people already ready to ask questions. The number to call in is area code 646-586-5345. 564-9619. Again, area code 646-564-9619. And I'll get to you in a minute on Blog Talk Radio. I see your hand up, Jay. And then if you're listening to me on Noon Vibe, you know you can just ask to join the stage. But with all of that, before I go on, my favorite quote, other than my own, is from Abraham: you cannot have a happy ending to an unhappy journey. And it is about the journey, and it's about living in the moment, practicing how to live in the moment. And with all of that, let me get to my guest, because everyone's heard me talk forever. John J. Davis, welcome to Reality Spirituality. I am so excited, and I'm so happy that you're here. Last week we had a little, and let me tell you something about last week. This is the truth. The interview wasn't supposed to happen last week. So whatever is happening, my dear audience, is supposed to be happening. And the judgment and the stories as to, oh, why? No. What happened is supposed to be happening, and if it's not happening, guess what? It's not supposed to happen. But with all of that, John, will you please share with my audience a little bit of your background, just, who the hell are you, and how did you find yourself being interviewed for these type of, for the near-death experience? How did you even get to on these YouTube channels?
Sure. Well, Rebecca, let me say first of all that it is so nice to be on your show. I love to share my story, and every time I have an opportunity, I am just delighted to share it because it's such a positive and hopeful experience that I had. So thank you for letting me share it with our audience. A little bit about how this came to be was my near-death experience happened when I was 21, and what I tell people is I normally have a really bad memory. Like, I can't remember what I did yesterday, but this experience, it is so ingrained in my mind that I remember every single detail like it happened yesterday, and I think that has to be something to do from God, because normally my memory is really bad, but this experience just gave me recall of everything that I saw, everything I was told, everything I experienced. It was just like yesterday. So when I share my story, that's how I can be so vivid and detailed, because I still remember it. But it was all these years later, and a couple of years ago, I thought, you know what, maybe I should just write my story out on Facebook. Because all the years before, I just shared it with people at work, people that I met, acquaintances, friends, and for me, I never really thought about what it sounds like for anybody to hear it for the first time, because I am so used to it. It's just part of my identity. So when I put it on Facebook, I got a lot of response from people saying that that's the most detailed NDE that I've ever heard. And people just started contacting me, asking me to be on their podcast and share my story. So ever since then, I've just been so fortunate to be able to have a platform now that people have podcasts just like yours, and I can share my story to help lift people up and help give them encouragement and hope that all of your loved ones who have passed, they're not gone. They're just in a different place. And that when our time comes, when it's our time to go, we're all going to be reunited again. So I've just been sharing my story ever since.
Well, let me ask you this. So you said it happened at 21. How old are you now? Because some of it...
I'm 59. I'm 59 now. It happened back in 1987.
59? He's a whippersnapper. He's a youngster. Yeah. I'm 68, but don't tell anyone.
I would never have thought that about you. You look fantastic.
Well, Botox helps, but please don't tell anybody.
I won't. I'll keep our secret. I won't say a word.
Now, let me say, so you're 57.
And 59 now.
Oh, 59, you see. Oh, let me give you another perspective about your memory so bad, because I heard you say it more than once. And in other words, one of the things that I share with people is you just look at any situation and shift your perspective. A practice is changing your perspective. And I'm just going to share that when you said my memory is bad, I'm going to challenge you and say one of the biggest gifts that that I believe let me just speak for myself, I can experience is living in and staying in the moment. And so when the memory is gone, I even ask the universe, God, universe, whatever term you want to use, I asked the universe, how do I practice staying in the moment? And they gave me, and they let go of that memory. My memory is non-existent. So if you shift and say, oh, I'm just living in the present moment now, it's just a shift.
That's awesome. What a great explanation. Yeah, you're right.
You know, John, you're going to find out, and people that have listening to me for years, I'm always right. No, and joking. Yeah. Okay, so you've been on, and how long have you been on podcasts? Has it been a year, 2 years?
You know, I think it's been 3 years now.
Okay, 3 years.
And my very first one was with Sandra Champlain. She was the first one that ever contacted me. And I said, yeah, I would love to share my story if you think it would help.
Okay, is the audience ready to, let's see, hold on a second. Would you like to, I'm going to come back to you. I'm going to come back to you, Jay. Let's dive into this story. Let's start at the beginning, share your story, and thank you.
And Rebecca, as we go along, please feel free to interrupt me, because I find that there are so many things about my story that I try to get out, but there are invariably always things that I forget to include. So if you have any questions, please let me know.
Let me tell you something. I have no problem interrupting anyone, so yes, I will.
Fantastic. That sounds great. I'll tell you how it all started. It began with my dad, really, and my dad was in sales for his career. And one of these years, he won a sales contest, and he won 2 mopeds, or what we would call today scooters. And we used to ride these things all over the neighborhood. Well, one day I was out riding, and I had an accident, and I slammed into a tree. And how I landed, I tore all the tendons off my right hand, and I had to go into surgery to have them reattached. Well, when this whole process happened, this whole experience, I was only 21, and I never had spent any really much time in a hospital, and I'd never had surgery before. So the day the surgery comes, we go in, and they start to give me the anesthesia, and something happened, and I had a severe reaction, and my heart stopped. And I was clinically dead for 7 minutes. So what happened is this whole experience that I had happened in an Earth time frame of 7 minutes. But for me, it felt like I was having this experience for an hour or two. And I'll get to that in a little bit about how some of the details of that worked out. But when my heart stopped, I felt my eyes close. The very next second, I opened up my eyes, and I found myself standing in the most beautiful building I had ever seen. It was made of white, polished marble, and it was this long, long corridor building. It was so long, I could not see the end of it. It could have been miles long. And right about, let me back up. I want to explain something to your audience before I forget. You know, a lot of people have heard near-death experiences, and typically what happens a lot of times is there'll be some kind of an accident, or the person will be having surgery, and they die, and they find themselves floating above their body, looking down at the scene, and then they become aware of this tunnel, and as they start to move down the tunnel, they notice that at the end, there's a white light. Well, as they're moving down the tunnel, they're met by somebody, usually somebody who crossed before them, a parent, a sibling, a grandparent, and that person tells them, hey, it's not your time, you have to go back. So we've never known what happens when someone goes into the light. When I look at all these NDE experiences, I think of them as jigsaw pieces, and we're all trying to put together this big puzzle. Well, with my experience, I look at my jigsaw puzzle piece as being the answer to what happens when you go into the light. Because where they took me, when my experience happened, they bypassed the tunnel, they bypassed the white light, and they put me on the other side of that white light. So my story begins on what happens to people when they cross into the light. And right about this point in my experience, in my left ear, I heard, "My name is Alan. I'm your spirit guide." Well, back in 1987, we didn't have NDEs yet. Nobody was talking about that.
Well, let me just say we have them, nobody was talking about it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I had never heard the term before, and I had never heard the term spirit guide. Well, as he talked in my ear, my spirit guide took me on this journey of a part of the other side. And everything that I'm able to explain to your listeners, he was telling me in my ear everything that I was seeing and everything that I was experiencing. So what happens is when we go into the white light, we end up in the building that I was in when my whole experience started. And it's called the Orientation Center. And it's this huge, long, white marble building. And on the right-hand side, to my right, were these 20 or 30 feet high columns, just like you would see in Greece or Rome. And they went all the way down as far as you could see. They were about 6 feet apart. In the center of this building were tables, marble tables, like the size of an average kitchen table. And they had 4 benches on each side of the table. And there were 2 people sitting at every one of these benches. And as this whole process is unfolding, my guide is talking to me in my left ear, and he told me that people who are sitting at these tables, they're called orientation counselors. And what they do is they help people remember where they're from when they come back from an earth life. Well, the most amazing part of this building was on the left-hand side of where I was. And it looked like they were tunnels or doorways, maybe about 7 or 8 feet high. They were about maybe 5 feet wide. And they went all the way down, corresponding to each one of these tables. So you have a table, then a tunnel, another table, and a tunnel. And again, it was so long, I couldn't see the end of it. And my guide said, "Look at the next tunnel." So I looked at the next tunnel, and there was a man coming through. He was an elderly gentleman, probably 80s or 90s, and he had his right hand holding his left chest like he had pain. And my guide said he died from a heart attack. So he goes into the tunnel, and he sees the white light. When he walks into the white light, you end up in the orientation center. So the woman that was sitting closest to him, she stood up. She walked over to the tunnel. She took his hands in hers, and she led him back to the table, and they sat across from each other. Well, the whole time she was sitting there with him, she was holding his hands, and I could see that she was talking to him, but I was too far away to hear what she was saying. And my guide was telling me that when they go through this orientation process, those orientation counselors are there to help people remember where they're from. And the reason that they're there is when we come into a lifetime, most of us don't remember where we're from. We're from the other side. That's our home. That's what God created for us for all eternity. And I've only met maybe a handful of people that ever remember where they were before they came in. And that's what these orientation counselors do. They basically tell them, you just finished your earth life. Now you're back on the other side. And my guide said, watch him. So as I started watching him, I could only see the counselor. I could see her, but I could only see the back of this gentleman. Well, all of a sudden, he began to change from a man in his 80s or 90s, an elderly gentleman, into a man in his early 30s. And my guide said, everybody on the other side is in their 30s. Now, Rebecca, something I regret is I never asked any questions about what I was seeing because during this whole process, I didn't know that I had died. I didn't know I died. I was just going along with everything he was telling me and just taking everything in. I think I would have asked so many questions like, why are we in our 30s? And I don't know if it has to do with Jesus being crucified at age 33. I have no idea why, but everybody is in their 30s. So once she was done talking to him, and he turned back into his normal appearance on the other side of a young man, he stood up, and he walked off to the right, and he walked down these 3 steps between the columns into the most beautiful gardens I have ever seen. I call that the gardens. I don't know if the other side calls it that, but that's what I called it. And it looks like the most beautiful, perfect English garden you've ever seen. The grass was emerald green, absolutely gorgeous, and there were trees and plants and flowers. It was absolutely breathtakingly beautiful. Well, the reason that when everybody crosses, the reason that they go down these steps, they go into the gardens, and they're met by everybody who knew that person in their lifetime, and everybody who crossed before them. So your parents, your siblings, grandparents, all the people that you know who crossed before you are there to welcome you, plus all the people that you knew on the other side before you came into that life. So there must have been hundreds of people that were waiting for this gentleman. And the reason that they're there is they're giving you kudos. They're clapping and happy and hugging you. And the reason I found out why this is such a big deal is my guide told me that Earth is the hardest of all the planets. And there are many, many souls who don't want to come here. So when we choose to come to this world, it's a really big deal that people go through and survive everything they go through. So when they go to the orientation, to the reunion, everybody's there to applaud them and to say you did a great job, you finished your lifetime, you did it, and now you're back home again.
Let me just stop just really quickly, because that was, you said Earth is the hardest place to go, it's the hardest place to be, it's the hardest place to live in, and I just want to share this. One of the reasons why this is my perspective, it is so hard, is because of the programming and the forgetting where I am from, forgetting that I'm not this body, I am not this name, I am not this identity, forgetting my true identity, which is pure presence. That's why it's so hard. It's the programming that makes it so hard. Carry on, please.
Exactly. I agree. So what happened is my guide took me to all these different places on the other side. And I don't know how they decided to do that, because I don't know how they knew I was coming. Did they know that I was going to have a heart attack? How did they know? So I think that the process that he takes me on is kind of the routine of what happens when we cross over. Oh, one thing I wanted to mention for your audience is there's a building that I found just by chance a couple of years ago. I was doing a Google search, and there's a building in the country of Turkey, and it's called the Temple of Artemis, Artemis. And that building looks exactly like the orientation center that I was in. So if your listeners want to look it up, that's kind of what they look like. And the places that he took me to, all of them were made of this beautiful white marble architecture. And the other side in totality isn't just that. It's like another planet. But he took me to a specific place on the other side. It felt like a college campus. You know how college campuses have their science building, and they've got their English building, you've got your history building. That's what it felt like. So the area that I was in was full of people. It was like being in a city. There were people everywhere. So that's what happened. He took me to the outside of everything first so I could see what it looked like. And then he took me to the inside of all these different places. So after the people had the reunion, he took me to another building that was rectangular, absolutely beautiful, and I can't even overemphasize how large these buildings were. They were so big, we have nothing like the size of them here on Earth. And it was a rectangle building with columns all along the outside. And he took me to the inside, and he took me to a room that was a round room, like being in a circular room. And on the top, hanging down from the ceiling, were these movie screens, just like you would see in a movie theater, and they were all in a circle. And my guide said, "This is your life review." And what he told me was that everybody who finishes a lifetime and they go back home again to the other side, everybody goes through a life review. And all of a sudden, every one of these screens, there must have been 15 or 20 of them, they all came on. And each screen had a different aspect of my lifetime playing. The first one that I saw was being a little baby. The next one was being a toddler. The next one was my first day of kindergarten. And every one of these screens was showing me a different episode of my lifetime. And the reason that we do that, I was told, is that it's a way for you to see, did you accomplish what you wanted to accomplish during your lifetime? And you can see it all. The other reason we have a life review is so you can see how your lifetime affected others. It's a big deal on the other side when a person does something that's unselfish, that they care for each other. Well, there was something that happened when I was in elementary school. There was a kid with us whose name was Troy, and he had MS, and he walked with kind of like braces on his arms. And one of these times he fell in the playground, and a couple of us went over and helped pick him up. Well, that's something that I never, ever thought about afterwards. That's just something that anybody would do. Well, they were playing that on one of these video screens, and they wanted me to know that what you did was just a selfless thing, and it means a lot to people on the other side, that you took time out of your day to help somebody else. That's what matters to the other side. And they also told me that the purpose of the life review is so that you can feel any type of hurt or pain that you caused somebody else. And they don't mean unintentional. They're talking about intentional pain. Like if you actually hurt somebody on purpose, the person who's doing the life review, they will feel what that person felt. And that's how we learn. That's how we grow and develop. And the only person that is with you during your life review is your guide, because the guide helps you plan your life. The guide helps you plan your experiences to what you want to learn from, because nobody has a life by accident. We all plan our lifetimes so that we can learn what we came here to learn. And everybody, my guide told me, has to go through the life review. Nobody is able to skip it. It's something that everyone goes through. And the thing I thought was so interesting is that nobody is judged by that. There is no judgment in a life review. And for me, I was raised Catholic. My dad was very Catholic. We went to church 2 or 3 times during the week and also on Sundays. So I grew up believing that everybody's going to be judged. The truth is, nobody judges your lifetime, not even God. The only person that judges it really is you. Did you do what you set out to accomplish? Did you live the kind of life that helps you learn the lessons you wanted to learn? Because it's those lessons that you take with you back to the other side. So that was something that was so neat for me to see, that we all have life reviews when we cross over.
Let me just jump in for a second. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I believe that is true is that God is having an experience through me in this human form.
Yeah, I believe that.
And so, and God, the universe, wants to experience everything, things that my person, my identity, my ego would not want to experience. I wouldn't want to experience murdering somebody or and the question, this actually came up in one of my classes with this near-death experience. This was maybe a couple of months ago. What happens to these people that are on Earth? We label them, judge them evil. The Hitlers, the murderers. What do they get to experience? All of this love, all of this bright light, all of it? And my answer is yes. What's your answer?
The way it was explained to me was that everybody goes to the other side because God didn't create a hell. There is no biblical concept of hell. It doesn't exist. God would never toss away any of his souls to a fiery pit for eternity.
I agree.
However, there are, on the other side, there are levels of development. There are the higher levels, of development, and there were also the lower levels. The people like the Hitlers, Mussolini's, all of them have to go through the life review also. For them, it's going to be a lot different than for you and I, because they'll have to feel everything that their victims felt. And I can't think of anything that is more educational than something like that, because all the souls learn and develop and they grow, especially from having felt what your victims felt. Well, what happens to them is they go to the lower levels. I don't know why, but it was explained to me that whatever your vibration is, whatever level you're on, that's where you go when you cross over. And everybody has the opportunity to continue to learn, and they can continue to elevate their growth. And I think when people have near-death experiences and they say that I was in hell, I think what they're experiencing is the lower levels, because God never created a hell. There is no hell. He gives his children as many opportunities as they need to learn, just like we would with our kids. With your own kids, you never think, all right, my kid screwed up again, I'm going to send them to hell. It doesn't work like that. But they will gravitate to the levels that they have learned through their progress and development. And that's how it was explained to me.
I love that explanation, and I would add, and this is my perspective, I would add that when, I was challenged, this higher consciousness, lower consciousness. I believe this is my own little analogy. We're all avocados, all of us, the same. And some of us are just ripe. Some of us it's just time for an experience. And then we are all evolving at different rates. So it is a constant evolution. Consciousness is evolving. Anyway, that's my take on it, but please continue.
You're absolutely right, because the feeling that I got from the other side was that when God created all of us, he gave us all the desire to want to learn, to continue growing. It's like it's built into our DNA. And that's one of the reasons that we come into lifetimes, is to actually learn, to experience, and to grow, and to develop. Because learning never ends. It's always a continual process. What also was explained to me, too, is that nobody forces you to come into a lifetime. It's just another avenue of learning. And I think people that have not really developed themselves are the ones that haven't had a lot of lifetimes. Because on the other side, you can still learn. There are all kinds of ways to learn that I'll get to in just a little bit. But when you come into a lifetime, that's experiential learning. And it's like trying to explain to somebody what it's like to ride a bike for the first time. You can describe it as all you want, but the person never knows what it's like until they do it themselves. And that's one of the reasons we come into life, because life on any planet is going to have its difficulties. It's going to have its challenges. It's going to have its hardships. And if you look at your life just in your own past, you realize that because you went through something difficult, that's where you learn. That's how you learn the most, is going through a difficult time. On the other side, everything is perfect there. There's no war, there's no hunger, there's no disease, there's no homelessness, there's nothing negative on the other side. And that's how God designed it. But if you want to experience something, to go through some kind of a conflict, to challenge yourself, you can't do it on the other side, because there's nothing to work through there. That's only here.
I'm going to jump in again and say, the homelessness, the war. I'm going to jump in and take off the judgment. The sun shines on the serial killer and the Pope. I'm going to take off the judgment that homelessness is something's wrong with it. I believe that everything is in order. But it's very hard for me, again, speaking for myself, to wrap this little pea brain around the unlimited opportunities, the possibilities. So I fall into this trusting that everything is in order. And back to something that you said, the learning. I'm not going to use the word learning only because it feels like it's a human word, but I am going to use the word experience, expansion, awareness. I am going to use it. Came here to experience. Life, this is my perspective, life is an experience without a judgment. A judgment, good, this is bad. It's just an experience. And apparently I chose to experience all of this. Yes.
I know. It's crazy when you think about it. You're like, why in the world would I have chosen to go through what I've chosen? And I'll talk about that in a little bit, too.
Now, let me just take a quick little break here, only because I have someone that's been holding. Would you mind, because someone has their hand up, would you mind just kind of breaking it up a little bit, or you want to go stay with your story?
Absolutely.
Okay,
sure.
Let me try this. Got to hold on all these things. One of these days I'm going to have a real studio, but it's not today. Let's see. Hold on. Thank you. Okay, hold on. Let me hold this and hold that. Oops. I'm coming to you, Jay. Hold on just a second. Getting chills, too. Okay, Jay, you are live with John J. Davis. What's up?
Hey, thanks for taking my call, Rebecca. And hey, John, it's great to just talk to you regarding this, because I'm interested in near-death experiences right now. And it's fascinating to me, people's stories or experiences from that. So I do have a question for you regarding what is going to lead up to we're going to talk next, is that why is it that we sign up for our pre-life plan before we get here and choose our soul family, come down here, forget everything, learn the experiences possibly that we're being, put the hand of God behind our back, pushing us to go into these directions of our what we came down to do from our pre-life planning up there. And then we leave this earth, and then we have to go back, like you said, to remind us what we experienced on earth. So why is it have a kind of like, I guess, a reincarnation cycle of that doing? And where do we get to a point where we just don't need to come back to this earth and just be up there just hanging out?
Sure. Very good question. This is how it was explained to me. The only reason, well, I should say there's not only one reason. There's quite a few, but the reasons that we come to Earth is to experience things that we can't experience on the other side. And part of it is for testing, to see how we do as we go through something that is difficult and is hard. And if you look at your own life, you look at relationships you've been through, you look at maybe a job layoff or something happened with one of your kids, you've lost a loved one, when you get to the other end of that grief, you realize that you have become so much more. You've learned so much. You become so much more than you were, and that's what you take with you to the other side. The reason that, and I want to explain something too, is that nobody makes any of us come into a lifetime. It's totally up to us. Like we talked about earlier, there are many, many souls who don't want to come to this planet, and they don't have to. They can stay on the other side and learn that way, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes too, or they can also go to other planets. Life on Earth is not the only planet that has the scheme of coming into an incarnation and learning. There are many other worlds, and my guide showed me that, and I'll mention that in just a couple of minutes too. But we really come in to really learn and to grow and to develop. And I think that is because how we were created by God. We all love to learn new things. And I think that's the primary reason why we come here. In fact, from my experience, I'll tell you two things that I learned. The first reason we come here is to learn and to grow and to develop. The second reason that we're here is to make a difference with your lifetime and to help others. And there's always a quote that I love to tell people because I think a lot of people can resonate with this. And it's a quote from the Dalai Lama. He said, "Our primary purpose in this life is to help others. And if you can't help them, at least don't hurt them." So from my experience, the two reasons we come here are to learn and to help others that need help along their path. So that was a great question. Did I answer your question for you?
Yes, it is. Yeah, I do have. Rebecca, can I ask you a couple more questions related to
yes, of
what's
course.
going on?
Ask more questions.
I do have a question for you. Why do you always say heaven is a place on earth? Is it the reason why? Is it the same way you're talking about then?
What is the question? Why do people say what?
Well, there's
What's
that
the
saying.
question?
Why is there a saying like heaven is a place on earth? Like, what does that mean?
I think of that song by Belinda Carlisle. Heaven is a place on earth.
If that's a song, Jay.
It is a song, but I'm saying, it's interesting. I hear it, but it says, is it really heaven is a place on earth? Is it? I mean, from what you're telling me, it's like more like a learning place on earth than anything else.
Well, let me throw in my perspective. It depends on how much you're programmed. If you're programmed to believe that there's something wrong, if you're programmed to believe that everything is in disorder, if you're programmed to believe, but you can also be programmed. You can also believe that yes, this is heaven on earth. When you really remember who you are, consciousness, pure awareness. Yeah, this can be heaven. But the trick is. And am I identifying with my mind, with my ego? Is that who I really am? And when I identify with this called person, then I'm going to have a lot of issues, right, John?
Absolutely. Yep, I agree with you.
So when you and this is a real practice now. So who am I identifying with? My spirit, my consciousness, or am I identifying with the person? And I'll tell you, when I identify with Rebecca L. Norrington, she finds a problem with everything, and it's really stepping out and practicing observing and witnessing this person that has a problem and not identifying with Rebecca. I told you, I'm leaving her behind. Nothing wrong with her, but she's not me.
Can I add something too?
Yeah.
Please.
Next question. From what I learned is that everybody on Earth is going to have their own Mount Everest to climb. Nobody's going to have a perfect life. This life on Earth isn't designed for that. Everybody's going to have trials and tribulations, and that's why we're here, to see how we do. Because if you wanted to have a perfect life, you would never have left the other side. You would just stay there. Because the other side, there are all kinds of ways to learn on the other side. It's just not experiential learning. So if you want to have a perfect life, you just never leave. If you want to come in to learn, to experience, and to develop and to grow, that's why you come here. Because there's going to be trials. There's going to be all kinds of things that just happen in life that you have to go through. And it's the process of going through those challenges and those struggles that make you a better human being. And that's what you take with you when you go back home again.
And let me throw in, let's see, what was his name? Hold on a second. I'm trying to remember this historic figure. That's right, Jesus. Even the struggles in the Garden of Gethsemane. I take this cup away from me. No, thank you. I don't want to go through this. But what was the lesson? The lesson is to surrender to God's will. The other one is when he's on the cross and people are spearing him and torturing him even more. Forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. That's a lesson. That's expanding. That is.
They don't know what they do.
Yeah. They don't know what they're doing. And so if you really want to know the truth, it's a practice to be, or scratch the be. The practice is to learn those lessons, how easy it is to forgive, to surrender to God's will. I've already given up goals, intentions, whatever God intends for me, I'm down with it. I don't make a list of 6-month goals, because what if my goals what if it doesn't coincide with what God wants for me, or the universe wants for me? I've given up. I'm not in control of any of this. That's what I believe. John, your input.
Sure. I believe that too. I absolutely believe that. One of the things that I learned is on the other side that God created all of us with free will. So He wants wants everybody to choose a path of light, not darkness. But everybody has free will. So when you come into a lifetime, you can, I don't know how much you can actually change the aspects of your lifetime that you planned out, but we all have free will.
Well, hold on a second. Hold on, because now we're going to have a disagreement. Now, I definitely believe that I chose to come here. But now that I'm here, free will, no. it's not my plan. But anyway, that's a whole debate. Not even a debate. I'm okay with anybody believing whatever they want to believe. I've given up thinking that I have free will in this human form.
Yeah. Well, I'll mention that in just a couple of seconds. We'll have another. I can address it when I to a different question.
Please. Now, so thank you, Jay, so much for your questions, and John Davis, please continue. Jay, did you want to say anything else?
Well, I'm just saying, it brings up so many. Can have hours of conversation on this, and I'm just wondering now is that, when John had your experience back in when you were 21. And you're maybe showing your life plan, and now you have kids. Did you raise your kids differently, or according to what you saw when you were on the other side, or are you just instilling those values that, hey, this is what's life, this is what Earth, being on this Earth right now, or when they're growing up, to do the things they need to do to be a better soul, I guess. So I'm just, really curious about that. So, that's I'll leave that, but I'm going to...
When I was in the building where you had your life review and I was watching all of the screens up above me, I couldn't see anything past age 21. That's as far as those videos went, because I hadn't lived that part of my life yet. And the other part of your question, Jay, I'm going to answer that when I get to the building where we plan our lifetime. And I'll be able to tell you more about that in just a second.
Jay, I love you. Thank you so much for coming on and asking your questions. And let's continue. Let's keep listening. Thank you again,
Welcome.
Jay.
Thank you. Welcome.
The next place he took me to, again, was another beautiful rectangle building. Just gorgeous with white marble columns. And he took me to the inside, and this was a little bit different in the room that I was in. This room looked like a regular movie theater that we have today. You walk in and there's a movie screen up at the front. And this was the part of my NDE that really challenged me because, like we talked about earlier, I was raised Catholic. And there wasn't a whole lot of interpretation when you're raised a Catholic about religion. It's just, you don't really talk about what the possibilities are. But my guide took me to this building because he wanted to show me, and he wanted me to tell people that past lifetimes are real. That we have, at creation, whenever we were created, we were given the ability to have as many lifetimes as we want. So the building he took me to was where you could look at past lifetimes. And he showed me 3 of my past lifetimes. So the screen lit up, and the first one, he showed me the first life he showed me was I was a monk. I had a shaved head. I was wearing a red gown or like a red robe in a monastery. And my job in that lifetime was to teach little kids about how to be monks and how to live in a monastery. And as I was watching this, I realized that I knew what part of the world that lifetime took place. And that was somewhere in Southeast Asia. Well, then that one disappeared. The next life he showed me was I was a shoe peddler. I had a wheelbarrow, and I had all these shoes in this wheelbarrow, and I was pushing it on a cobblestone street. And what I was in that life was my job was to fix people's shoes. And I was taking these shoes back to everybody's home and passing them out to people, so I was kind of a shoe peddler. And that life took place somewhere in Eastern Europe. And then that one disappeared. And the next one he showed me was I was a fisherman, and I was standing in a little raggedy boat on a lake, and I had nets that I was throwing into the water. And part of my job over there was to help feed the community with fish. And something, too, that I think your audience will like is I learned But on the other side, everybody tends to have jobs that they perform, that they like to do. And it's not like jobs here on earth. We all have to have jobs to pay bills here. But on the other side, people do what they love to do. And I think part of it has to do with how God created us. I firmly believe that God created all of us with unique and special gifts. And on the other side, we can pursue those gifts and the things that we love. And I think the evidence for that is just looking here at people's lifetimes. Some people want to be chefs. Some people want to be police officers. Some people want to be teachers. And I think that comes from how God created all of us. And I had a really hard time believing that past lifetimes were real. But the truth is, you can have as many or as few lifetimes as you want. It's totally up to the individual soul and how much they want to experience from those lifetimes. Well, I'm probably the most skeptical person that I've ever met. So after I had this NDE, I went to see a hypnotherapist, because I had heard that in hypnosis you can actually see past lifetimes. So I went and I told this woman, about my NDE, how I was raised a Catholic. It was really hard for me to accept that. Can you help me see other lifetimes? And sure enough, she took me back, and I could see 3 different lifetimes. And that's when I realized, oh my gosh, it really is true. We do have different lifetimes. And there are religions on earth today, like Buddhism or Hinduism, who believe in past lifetimes. It's only the Christian world that doesn't believe in that. But they really are real. Past lifetimes are real.
I believe that too. I do. Wow, this is just fascinating. Keep going.
Isn't it good? Yeah, it totally. Every time I talk about this, I love sharing my story because it reminds me of everything I saw.
Now, how old were you when you went to a hypnotist? You have the NDE when you were 21. How old were you when you went to the hypnotist?
It was just 3 months later. I was still 21.
Oh, okay.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
The next building he took me to, this is going to answer Jay's question from earlier. The next building he took me to the outside of it again, just like he did with all of them. And this building was just a gigantic round building. And again, it was so large, I can't even describe how large these buildings were. We had nothing like them here on Earth. It was a round building, and it had white marble columns all around the outside of it. And the top was a big dome. And the only building that I've ever seen on Earth that looks like this is the Pantheon in Rome. It looked like that, but it was beautiful white marble. Well, my guide said, this is where we go to plan our lifetimes. And I didn't think to ask him why did we go to this building, but for whatever reason, this is where we go to plan lifetimes. And our guide comes with us and helps us plan our life. So that's what the outside looked like. Then he took me to the inside, and he took me to a table, a beautiful white marble table, and there was a scroll on this table. And what it looked like is, have you ever seen ancient Egyptian papyrus?
Yeah.
Papyrus paper?
Yeah.
It looked like that. It had that kind of brown coloring to it. And it was wrapped in a blue ribbon. So I walked up to it, and I picked it up, and I took the ribbon off, and I unfolded the scroll. And immediately I could see that there was writing through this entire scroll. And what it looked like calligraphy. You know how when you have those pens, you get them into an inkwell and you wrote it like that? That's kind of what it looked like. And my guide wanted me to know that nobody on earth comes here by accident. Everybody has a life plan. And what we do before we come into a life is we write on these scrolls what we want to accomplish.
What we want to experience. What we want to experience.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's very detailed in terms of you plan what country you're going to live in, what language you're going to learn, are you going to have kids in that life, who your parents are going to be, what kind of a career you're going to have, are you going to go to university, and all these things become part of your life plan. And what I thought about at the time, it felt like, you know what people do when they have New Year's resolutions at the end of the year? and they write out their goals for the new year. That's kind of what it felt like, and very, very detailed. But when I went to try to read what I'd written, because I wanted to see what did I write, it's folded up again, and I wasn't able to read a single thing. And I think the reason was because if I had known what I was going to be doing in that lifetime, I may have done something different to offset that lesson or that learning. And I think that answers Jay's question from earlier, that we really do plan a lot of our lifetimes. Right about then, I looked over to my right, and there was this huge wall full of these scrolls, and it had to have been blocks or miles long. And I realized that everybody who was in a lifetime had one of these corresponding scrolls on this wall. So what my guide showed me, he took the scroll, my scroll, off the wall on his table so I could read it and see what it was. And he wanted me to tell people that our lifetimes really are planned. They aren't accidents. Well, right about then, I looked over to my left-hand side, and there was this huge, sprawling window. And this is the first time during my NDE that I saw other people. And there was a walkway outside this window, and there were all kinds of people walking back and forth. So wherever my guide took me on the other side, it was a really busy place, all kinds of people. And what it looked like is if you could imagine going to a city, like Las Vegas maybe, downtown Las Vegas or New York at lunchtime, and everybody's going their different ways to go get lunch. That's what it looked like when I was looking out this window. I could see people look just like us. Some people are taller, some people are shorter, some people have brunette hair, blonde hair, and every race, every ethnicity was there. But the neatest thing that I also saw was on the other side of this walkway, this path, there was the lake, and it was the most beautiful, serene lake I have ever seen. Even to this day, nothing I've ever seen on Earth equals to what I saw. And my guide told me that everything that you love about nature here on Earth is on the other side. All the beauty, all the magnificence of nature is over there. Well, as I looked at this lake, it was so calm, it looked like glass. And it was so clear that I could see the bottom of the lake. And this was the neatest part about this. Have you ever seen weeping willow trees?
Yes.
There's these big trees that come down like this with their branches. All the branches had leaves, and all the leaves were floating on the top of the water. It was absolutely beautiful. So that's where he told me that nature exists on the other side also, not just here. So if you love to hike, if you love to camp, you love to run in the mountains, you can do that too. They have oceans there and lakes and rivers, just like we do here. But they're so much more beautiful. I can't even begin to describe the beauty of what it's like there. All these times that I've ever shared my story, I have never been able to explain to people what it really is like there, because I don't seem to have the language or the ability to put in people's minds how beautiful it really is. So we have so much to look forward to. Well, before we left this building, he took me to another area that looked like a gigantic library with these huge bookshelves, but all the books looked the same. They looked like Encyclopedia Britannicas is what they looked like. And the writing, it didn't go across. The writing went down on every one of these books. And what he took me to was an area where I had never heard this term before, but it was called soulmates. Have you heard of soulmates before, Rebecca? You probably have.
I have a soulmate, but yeah, I've heard of soulmates, but I don't know the way. Yeah.
A lot of people have heard that term now. I didn't hear it. I didn't know what it was back then.
Yeah.
But he wanted me to know that everybody who's ever been created by God has a soulmate. And it's the perfect mate that we have through eternity. And he took me to the area where my soulmate's book was, and it says N-I-N-A, going down the binding of the book. And every one of us has a soulmate. And what this book contains is it's everything about that person's lifetimes, what they learned, who they became, what their gifts were. All of these things are in these books. The one thing I don't know that people have asked me a lot about is, does your soulmate come into every one of your lifetimes? And my first reaction to that is no, that they don't. But I think they can. I just don't know how often. And the reason I don't think they do it very often is because one of the main things that we learn from is having relationships here on Earth. And you learn a lot about having relationships. And if your soulmate was with you for all of your lifetimes, maybe you wouldn't learn about relationships like you would if you didn't have your soulmate with you. So I don't know if they all come into a life with us or not. All I know is that we do have soulmates on the other side. And if you feel in your Earth lifetime like you never had the kind of relationship that you wanted to have, you never found a perfect love, that's okay. Because having a lifetime on Earth, nobody comes here because they want to have a perfect lifetime. If they did, they would just stay on the other side. So you come here to learn, to grow, and the way you grow the most is by going through something that's challenging. And that's what we learn by having relationships. And that was the building that I call with the dome building.
Whew, fascinating. Well, the soulmate thing, I just remember years ago, I always wanted a soulmate. And I have a soulmate. It's very difficult to explain. We're totally opposite, and we found each other in when I was in my 30s. I think 35. No, yeah, maybe 35 or so. But it's not a romantic relationship. It's all spiritual, and it is indescribable. Just what you're trying to tell us about the beauty of this place. And how I would describe a soulmate is someone that is meant to grow together on a totally different level than the human level. It's nothing to do with I love you, or even living with somebody. I mean, he doesn't even live in the same state. It's just, but this growth, growing together, and the ultimate is acceptance of the other one's growth, regardless.
Yeah, exactly.
Acceptance.
Because growth.
And in fact, if whoever's listening, one or two people, if you are in a relationship, the only reason, scratch it if they're a soulmate or not, but the only reason why people don't get along is lack of acceptance. Lack of acceptance of the other person, exactly where you found them, not wanting them to be changed, not wanting them to change, not wanting them to do something so you'll feel better, but total acceptance, and quite frankly, acceptance of everyone, even strangers. This judgment of something's wrong with these people. Of course, I used to do that all the time. Something is wrong with someone else. No, acceptance. But it's a hard practice, especially with the programming. Keep going.
Accepting the fact that we all continue to learn and to grow. We all continue growing.
And we are all as different as our fingerprints. I've said it millions of times. We are all as different as our fingerprints. So the programming is not to accept somebody that's different than me. But anyway, I digress. Back to you.
Sure. Well, that was the building with the dome on top. The next place he took me to, I think, was my favorite of my entire NDE.
Oh.
And again, he took me to the outside of this building, and it looked like a huge, gigantic sports stadium. It didn't have any columns on it. It was just this huge sports stadium. So we go on the inside, and the inside there are thousands and thousands of seats. And I remember all the lights were on. It was really bright here, and there was a rounded ceiling. And my guide said what this building was a planetarium. Do you remember, Rebecca, when you were a kid going on field trips where you went to a planetarium? Yeah, I remember that too. And they have these on the other side. Well, right about then, there was a gentleman behind me. And I never turned around to look at him. I just didn't think of it. I just listened to him. And what he was a guy on the other side who loved astronomy. He was kind of an expert in the planets, the galaxies, astronomy, and what his job was to run the planetarium. So he started talking to me, and he said, let's begin. sudden, all the lights went off. It was pitch black, and I sat down. And he said to me, when you look at the stars, this is what you see. And what he was talking about was everybody on Earth at that level of development and knowledge, this is what they see when they look at the stars. And on the ceiling, he showed planet Earth. Then he showed our sun. And then he began to show me all the planets in our solar system: Jupiter, Uranus, Neptune, Venus, Saturn, all of our solar system. And then it went away. And then he said, when we look at the stars, this is what we see. And he was referring to everybody on the other side. And all of a sudden, planet after planet after planet started showing up. First it was dozens, then thousands, then millions of planets. And he said to me, there is far more life in the universe than you can possibly know. And I think that my guide took me to the planetarium for two reasons. So that I could tell people that life on Earth is not the only inhabited planet. And the second reason he wanted to show me this was that there are multiple millions of other planets that we can have lifetimes on. And I want to illustrate something for your audience. I've always loved astronomy. I grew up watching Star Trek, Captain Kirk, and the first time I saw Star Wars, I thought I was going to lose my mind, because I always believed that there has to be more life out there.
Well, hold on a second. The first was Lost in Space.
I remember that.
Yes, you're a youngster, Lost in Space.
Yep. Dr. What was his name?
Yes, Dr.
Smith.
Dr. Smith. But before let me just share, too, with the audience. If you want to speak with John live, the number to call in is area code 646-564-9619. Again, area code 646-564-9619. And if you are on Noom or Vibe, just ask to join the stage. And let's go. Let's continue.
Sure. Well, I want to tell your audience something that I learned relatively recently, because I love to read astronomy. In fact, when I was in college, I took an astronomy class, but I had to drop it because I could not understand the math and how large things really are. Well, a while ago, I was reading an article from this astronomer, and she was trying to explain to the layperson how large the universe really is. And she gave an example. She said that if we had a spaceship that could travel at the fastest speed that we know of, which is the speed of light, 186,000 miles a second, if you took that ship and put it on one end of the Milky Way galaxy, it would take 99,000 years for that ship to get from one end of the galaxy to the other. And that's just the Milky Way, just our galaxy. And then she went on to say that in the Milky Way, astronomers estimate that there are 100 billion planets in our galaxy. And I was on the NASA website not too long ago, and this is where I read this statistic. Did you know that astronomers have found 285,000 separate galaxies? And they think that there are billions and billions of galaxies in the universe. So there are an unlimited number of planets that we can have lifetimes on. Just the repercussions of thinking about that, Earth is not the only planet. There are billions of other worlds. And when I think about that, I just think, gosh, I want to learn about that. I want to know what's out there. And I get so frustrated sometimes knowing that I can only think in my human brain. But there's so much more. And that's the size of the universe. When I learned that, just absolutely blew my mind.
We're less than a speck here. We're not even a tick. And it is unimaginable. And I get it. I know it. I don't even. That's not even where I'm going to go. But it's more than just this. I'm speaking for myself. This little lifetime. And there are some that believe, and I'm one of them, that there's the past, the future, the present, all happening at the same time.
Yeah, that could be true, too. I didn't experience that, but it's possible. I have no doubt.
Keep going.
Okay. The next building was also something I liked, too, because I love history. I'm a total history buff. So the next place he takes me to was the largest building by far. It was so long, I could not see the end of it. It could have been miles long. But it didn't have columns on the side. It only had the marble columns in the front. And what this building looked like, it looked like our Supreme Court building. It's got the big triangle up front that holds up the roof, and it's got the columns, and then it had like 40 or 50 steps you had to walk up to get to the entrance. So we walk in, and I immediately realized it's a library with probably 20 or 30-foot high wood bookshelves and all kinds of books. And my guide said, anything you want to learn, you can learn in this library. And some people have told me that they think I was in a building called the Akashic Records. My guide didn't tell me that. He didn't tell me what the name of these buildings were. But it might have been that, because anything you wanted to learn about, if you wanted to learn about science or history or English or language, anything, you could go to this library. And this is where I saw a bunch of people also. People were sitting, studying. Some people were just talking. Other people were looking for books. It was totally just so much activity going on everywhere. Well, my guide took me to an area on the left-hand side of this library where there were all kinds of what we would call now, in our lifetime, we would call these as study rooms. That's what these rooms looked like. They were about the size of maybe an average living room. So it takes me to the one room, and there was a woman sitting in this room. She had jet black hair that went down to her waist, and she was wearing kind of a purplish kind of tunic. And my guide said, let me back up. She was sitting there, and she was looking at the opposite wall, and there looked like what we would call today a flat-screen TV. Back in 1987, we only had those huge, big, bulky televisions. But when I saw this flat-screen TV, I was absolutely amazed. It was mounted on the wall, and it must have been one of those 50-inch, 60-inch screens because it was really big. And my guide said, get closer and watch what she's watching. Well, I thought she was watching a movie because she was watching Native American Plains tribes on horseback in a battle with the United States cavalry on horseback. And they were in the plains having this battle. And I thought, okay, she's just watching a movie. But she wasn't. She was watching living history. And my guide said that she wanted to learn about this battle that had taken place 200 years ago on Earth. And my very first thought was, how is that possible? How can she be watching living history? We didn't have video cameras back then. I don't think we even had cameras yet. And my guide said something I've never forgotten. He said, everything gets recorded. And I still to this day, I don't understand how that can happen, because none of us have somebody recording us that we can see. But when I had my life review, I could see my life, just like I was watching a movie. And this woman, the reason she was in this room is she was just really interested, curious about that particular time of Earth's history. So anything that you want to learn about that happened on Earth's history, you can go to the library, you can go to one of these viewing rooms, and you can actually watch it. And I remember thinking at the time, I can't wait to get back, because all of my life I wanted to learn about the D-Day Normandy invasion in World War II. And when I get back, that's something I want to see. I want to watch what those men went through at that pivotal point in history. So I was so excited. I was so fired up knowing that, wow, you can still learn on the other side. So if you didn't have a lifetime in that particular era, you could go to this room in the library and you could watch history and learn about it that way. And I thought that was so fantastic.
That is fantastic, and that's fascinating. I was just trying to think about what I would want to I mean, the list is endless, what I would want to know.
Good.
I've always been fascinated with World War II. Don't ask me why.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
Maybe you had a lifetime during that time.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah.
Let me see if there are any, because we have some people in the queue. And if you want to speak with John live, just press the number 1. Press the number 1. I'll give you 10 seconds to press the number 1. And or if you're listening on Noon Vibe, if you want to speak with John, just ask to come to the stage. Anyone want to say press the number 1? No. Going once. Going twice. Okay. Hold on just a second. Only because Jay has been listening to me, believe it or not, John, for 15 years. 15 years,
wow.
And we've never met, but I want to come back and see if Jay has another question only based on all of the things that you have been saying. Hold on. Jay, hold on just a second. Jay, I told you I loved you. Do you have another question after all of this? Shoot your shot if you do.
You too. I do actually have a question, and actually what you're saying is that when you came back onto the search, John, did you have any commendation, like when you were practicing, going to Catholic Church, when you talked to other priests, did they say, no, this is not happening, this is not true? Did it test your beliefs or test your experiences when you were up there?
That's a great question. I've asked that before.
You're welcome.
So many of us are raised with religion. One thing about the other side that I realized is that the other side doesn't seem to have religion there. I didn't see anybody who, this person's a Buddhist, that person's a Catholic, that person's a Hindu. That didn't seem to exist there. It seems that everybody has this deep spirituality and this love of God, but the spirituality was the real focus there. And I didn't tell anybody in the Catholic Church what I experienced, because I knew they wouldn't believe in that. Yeah, they would put their thumb down on it. So I never told anybody. But I always believed what happened is after my NDE, I became so much less religionistic. In fact, I tell people that right now I am about 50% Christian, because I believe in what Jesus' message was: to love people, to not judge, to have compassion, to care for other people. I'm all about that. I just don't believe in all the dogma. And there didn't seem to be any dogma on the other side when I was there. There was this real deep spiritual sense of love is what's really the most important, without any kind of religionistic or dogma attached to that. So that's a great question.
Well, let me throw in my 2 cents, because all religion, put your seatbelts on, is all man-made anyway.
Yes, it is.
Man-made. So there you go. Jay, you have another question?
Yes, I do, actually.
I knew you would.
No, thank you. This is a great conversation. I'm just loving this.
Yes.
My question is actually, I find on this earth plane that forgiveness is a very difficult thing for human beings to do. I just wondered, did you get any information up there regarding forgiveness and what we have to do down here for forgiveness to ascend our soul to a higher level?
What a great question.
Yeah, I didn't really get any sense of that here on Earth, but I do know that on the other side, you don't hold grudges on the other side. So if you had a family member who was really mean to you, treated you badly here on your Earth life, when they go through their life review, they learn what they did, and how their behavior affected yours. So everything on the other side is kind of like it dissolves. All those human things that we go through kind of dissolve on the other side. And you see yourself as a soul, as a perfect soul as God created you. But what I think that's something that's really hard on Earth is that you try to learn forgiveness. And that is something that people come into a lifetime to learn from. That could be one of their main themes, to learn about what it's like to learn forgiveness. Because we all come here for different reasons. Some people come to know what it's like to lose a child, for example, or to grow into old age. They experience things like, what is it like to lose your parents? Just all these different things come into life as to why we're here. And there's probably as many reasons to come into a lifetime as there are people. So we all come in to work on different things, and we all have different experiences to help us learn what we came here to learn. Great question, and I'm just so glad, Jay, that I'm just so glad that you're here with me, and I'm so glad for our connection, and it has been a long time. And one of these days we're going to meet, but I love you, Jay. I really do. And we have another person. Who wants to ask. Hold on just a second here. I got to switch this and switch that. Click here, click there, click here, guest waiting. And this is Cecilia Grace. Hold on, Cecilia. You're going to be on in just a second. With John Davis, this near-death experience. Wow. Yes, you are live. Go ahead.
Oh, my gosh, this is so fascinating. Thank you, John, for sharing. Wow. I had goosebumps the whole time. I'm at work, so I was trying not to join, but once the gentleman was speaking about forgiveness, I feel like that so far is like the thing that I chose to come here to learn. My mother just recently passed away on April 30th, and, after 21 years of not speaking to her, I came to an understanding of, how things are working, that we're all doing the best that we can, and I, reached out to her after 21 years and just told her that I understand, And so when she passed away on April 30th, I had just finished talking about, on an app, I was just talking about my experience that, I was able to, I never said forgive, but I guess that's what it was. Like I said, I keep saying an understanding. And then on that April 30th, I was sharing the story, and then just minutes later when I finished sharing that story, and I said while I was sharing my story, I'm so glad that my mother or I didn't die before I got a chance to reach out to her. And just minutes later, I got a call from the ICU that she had been in the hospital for 5 days. Hours later, she passed away after I just finished telling that story. And then that night, reading A Course in Miracles, lesson number 121, forgiveness is the key to happiness. Oh, wow. Incredible. I agree. I'm getting all of these, the signs and acknowledgments that, I'm on the right path. I'm doing the right things.
Well, let me jump in, and you've always been doing the right thing, and this is another level. Oh boy, don't put your seatbelt on this one, because I wrote a whole chapter about forgiveness in my first book, and then I get a message that there's nothing to forgive because there are no mistakes. And another thing I want to say, I a whole chapter on forgiveness, and now there's no mistakes. But I also want to say is it's an energy. It's an energy of forgiveness. It's an energy of letting go, and it's only because of the program. It's only because of the programming that humans don't forgive. I mean, this holding a grudge, being done wrong, is another program. The last thing I want to say before I'm going to let John jump in is that, where's my train of thought? It was so good too. Is that I was getting chills when I was listening to you. I was getting chills when I was listening to you too, Celia. And then also, you can have a conversation with these people that have passed on. If this forgiveness, you can forgive, let go, even if they're gone. That can happen too. You don't have, just because they're in human form. What do you think about that, John?
It's true. In fact, something that I would
hold on just a second. Okay, let John speak, and then you're next. And I'll bring you back. Go ahead, John.
One thing I learned is if you feel like you never had closure with a family member before they passed, it's okay, because you can talk to them. If you talk to them out loud, they can hear you. I don't know if they can hear our prayers like God can. I didn't have any experience with that. I only had experience with knowing that if you talk to your mom out loud, like when you're driving, like I talk to my parents all the time when I'm driving. They can hear us when we talk out loud. So talk to your mom as much as you want. They can hear us.
Sure, yeah, I get that. And also, I don't know if you caught, but I did reach out to my mother during the pandemic. That's the year that, like I said, I came to this understanding that, you know, we're all doing the best we can. So I did do that part, you know, I did. And I'm so glad because I feel like I would feel so differently right now after her passing, like regret, you know, all of this stuff that I did do that. And I also want to share that the day that I reached out to her the first time in 21 years, I was working in this place where we were selling Christmas stockings, and the Christmas stockings came with these name tags, wooden name tags. And
you're running out of time. You're running out of time, but I want you to come back. Okay, come back. Okay, come back. Because this app, they're only on a 5 minute. Okay, let me just bring her back. Bring her back. She's coming back. 5, 3, 2, 1. Blast off. Go ahead.
Yeah, they said I'd come back in. So I was working at this place and we were selling Christmas stockings and they came up with wooden name tags. Now, the first time that I'm reaching out to my mother in 21 years, this name tag falls out of the box, and the name tag says Ella. And my mother's name is Isabella, my grandmother. She had died 4 years prior to this. So at the time that I'm reaching out to my mother in 21 years, my grandmother comes through and lets me know that she is there. And I just think, like, I just keep wanting to tell this story because it's just so fascinating to me and definitely, like, strengthening my faith, you know. I mean, I couldn't make any of this up if I wanted to, you know. Mm-hmm. And I also have to say that, you know, my mother, my uncle, and my aunt all passed away, not even within, like, all three of them, less than a year. And all of them holding grudges, anger, bitterness, resentment, all of it. But I was determined that I was not going to die this way. Like, absolutely not. I was not going out like that with all of this. And that's why I came to this understanding and made sure that I knew I was capable of reaching out to my mother, and I did. So thanks for letting me share. You're welcome. And
let me just say this, the dying with the anger and the grudges and all that, that's part of their journey, that's part of their destiny.
Oh, right.
And there's no judgment about it. There's no judgment. And you said something that's very profound, and it's a practice. Everyone is doing the best that they can in every situation. Everyone is doing the best that they can. Me, my guest, you, and so it's the judgment. We're programmed to judge. Someone is higher, better, whatever. And the practice of acceptance, knowing that. And this is another one. Oh, this is really going to hurt. Well, it hurts me. Whatever I label someone else, judgmental, racist, narcissist, whatever I label someone else, guess what? I own it. So the labeling others, it's a tough practice. That's why the acceptance is the only way to go. But it's a practice.
Right. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thanks, John, for sharing your story. I actually didn't really have questions. I just wanted to share that and see, I don't know, maybe insight from the other side as to, like, my experience, I guess. That's really about it. But thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Okay, John, we're back.
All right, good. I know I've been talking a long time, so I'm almost done.
Yes.
So after he told me to that library, he took me to something else that I think was another one of my favorite parts. He took me to an area where there was a huge castle, just like the kind of castle you would see in medieval England or France. It was huge, made out of stone, perfect cut-out stone, how this castle was built. And he explained to me that everything is on Earth, like all the structures, the buildings, everything that we think are beautiful, he said we're on the other side first. So the reason he took me to this castle was that if you didn't have a lifetime in medieval Europe, but you were interested in learning about that particular time of Earth's history, you can go to an area on the other side and see what the castles look like. So he took me, he said, go on the inside. So I walked in, and the first thing I noticed was this sprawling red carpet all throughout the inside of the castle, and it made me feel like I was royalty. And on both walls, the one to the right and the one to my left, there were life-size paintings. And what my guide told me was that the life-size paintings are people who lived in that castle during Earth's history. So if you wanted to look at and see what Queen Elizabeth looked like or King George looked like, you could go to this castle, you could see what they looked like. You could actually look at these life-size paintings and see what these people looked like and what kind of clothes they wore. So these paintings went down there about 6 feet apart all the way down these walls. And in front of every painting, there was a podium. And on top of the podium, there was a book. Well, my guide said that book is about that person's lifetime because they had very public lives. And if you wanted to learn about them, if you wanted to learn about royalty, you could go to this castle, see what they lived in. You could look at the paintings, see what they looked like. And then you could read about them in these books. You could read about their lifetime. Well, right about then, I looked over to my right, and you know how castles have those big, long stairwells that go down? There was a woman who was walking down the stairwell, and she had strawberry blonde hair, and she was wearing kind of like a peach-colored outfit or a gown. And she could see me, and she walked up to me, and she said, is there anything I can help you find? And Rebecca, I got to tell you, even to this day, I still kick myself because I said the stupidest thing I could ever think of. She asked me, is there anything I can help you find? And I said to her, no thanks, I'm just looking. I could have asked her anything. I could have asked her, where am I? Who are you? I thought I was supposed to be having surgery. But I didn't ask her anything. I just said, no thanks, I'm just looking. And my guide then explained to me that this woman on the other side, what she loves to do is she loves history. And she is what we would call a scholar of that particular time of Earth's history. So if you're on the other side, you never had a life in medieval Europe and you wanted to learn about it, you could go to this castle, you could look at the painting, you could read the person's book, and you could also ask her any questions you wanted to ask her about that particular era of Earth's history. She was like a master teacher. And I thought that was so neat because on the other side, we can still learn. There are still all kinds of ways to learn. And that's part of life on the other side. So that was the castle. And here's the last part. And this is probably the most profound part that has the most implications for me for the rest of my life.
You saved the most profound to the end. I love it.
Good, because this is how the whole thing ended. My guide took me to a field, and it was kind of like a wildflower field with rolling hills, green grass. And I remember there was not a breeze. It was a perfect day. The sun was out. It was beautiful. And then my guide left. And I thought I was standing there by myself. And all of a sudden, a gentleman showed up in front of me. And I could see his hands. He was wearing a white robe with a gold sash around his waist. And he had gold-colored sandals that laced up his calves. And as I looked at him, I knew that this was the entity that we call Jesus here on earth. This was Jesus. And I tried to look at his features, his face. He was so bright and had so much energy about him that it looked like there was lightning coming out of his face. I couldn't see his features. And he spoke to me, and this is what he said. He said, you must tell them there is no death. And the very second he said that, boom, I was right back in the hospital with everybody looking over me. So all of my life, I had thought about what he said because it was it was the way he said it. He didn't say, you know what, John, when you have time in your lifetime, would you mind sharing this experience with people, telling people you know, acquaintances, about what you saw? He didn't say it like that. He said, you must tell them there is no death. So what I've done ever since then is try to do what the other side told me, to just simply share my story. And sometimes, when you asked me earlier, when did I first go public about this, that's when I realized that how my story sounds to somebody who hears it for the first time, it really is remarkable. For some reason, they gave me all this information for me to share. And all these years, I've always wondered, why did they give it to me? Because I'm nobody. I don't have a podcast. I don't have a radio show. I don't even have a book, or I don't even have a website. So they must have known that. So I don't know why they gave it to me. So all I've done is, ever since this time, is just try to share it with anybody who will listen. And that was my whole NDE.
Well, why they gave it to you? Because before you decided to come here on this earth, that was one of the things. I want to be able to share the story.
Yeah. Maybe so. Maybe
yes.
So.
Yeah, I mean, if everything's all planned, which I believe that it is, some of it is, and that question why is because it's supposed to happen, and you are somebody. You are somebody. You are somebody with a story that, quite frankly, is one of a story of truth, a story of peace, a story that anybody that's going to be open to hearing it is going to learn.
Good. I hope so, because that's my whole motivation.
That is. I'm getting chills. That is it. And I'm going to throw this out too, just because I'm listening to you. You use this word regret more than once. Regret is another program. Is another program, and that's a program coming from the identity, coming from the ego, coming from the lower consciousness, the mind. I regret. There are no regrets. No regrets. Yeah. And especially even there, because even in that space, no regrets. You think that God is going to have you experience all of this and then give you a regret? No. Who's the author of saying that now I regret? That's not your spiritual side.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
you're right.
That's not your spiritual side. So it's really a practice of listening to what story is, because it's fascinating that you sometimes when you tell the story, you go from the whole spiritual pure to this man, and when I say man, the identity, the person, the John J. Davis has regrets, but the spirits have none.
Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah, I think that's true.
What a fascinating. Now, question: have you ever thought of videotaping all of this and just having it for yourself, like a diary, a video diary? Have you ever thought of that?
No, I never have actually. I never have.
Well, what are you waiting for?
That's a good idea.
Yeah, you just videotape yourself, and if you have StreamYard, you could do it for free. Videotape everything that you just told me, and you can stop and start it, or but the way you've told it, especially you've told it so many times, I'm assuming that you can just flow through all of it without any interruptions from this annoying person with the hair. But you can flow through all of it, and then you have it documented. And who knows? And who knows what that's going to bring or come? But now you have everything documented.
That's a good idea.
Yeah,
that's a really good idea. I wrote it all down. I just I've never videotaped myself. But
the story, the way you tell your story, it's interesting. It's fascinating. When the way you tell it, I mean, you just sit at the end. I'm sitting at the end of my seat. So the visual is very, very important.
I know. What's so interesting is as I tell it, every time I tell my story, I'm right back there again. And I can see everything just like I saw it. It's like the memories have never gone away. It's like yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And I forget. It's so interesting because for me, for all these years, it's always been second nature to me. It's not like I have this belief that we live after death. It's a knowing, and I used to have a really hard time with trying to realize what my story sounds like to someone who's never heard it before. And they say, how can it be that magical? And I tell them I don't even have the language, the words to describe how much better it really is than I can describe it. I don't have the words to describe what it's really like there, other than it's absolute paradise.
And that's how you started. I don't have the words. I can't even explain the unexplainable. And you go on with the story, and here you have it. And who knows?
Yeah.
Tell me I'm a genius.
You're a genius.
What a pleasure. Now, I'm going to end the show, but you stay on with me, okay? Stay on with me.
Okay.
That's all of today's show. Thank you for listening to Reality Spirituality Radio, which is heard every Sunday at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Visit my website at RebeccaNorrington.com. Follow me on Twitter at RLNorrington, LinkedIn, and my Instagram handle is Reality Spirituality. Guess what's happening on YouTube? My son and I do a live show every Saturday at 9:15. Mother and son making sense out of nonsense, plus more. Every weekend at 9:15 Pacific Standard Time. And my first book, Reality Spirituality, The Truth About Happiness, that was published in 2014. I don't even recognize that person now. But this book today is out. It's been out maybe a week and a half. I'm holding it up. It's called Programmed for Unhappiness, Exposing the Untold Truth. If you are interested in wanting to experience more, and when I say happiness, it is an energy, it is a vibration of contentment. If you want to experience that, it's on Amazon, Kindle, Lulu, soon to be coming on Barnes & Noble. And until next week, my dear audience, I want you to remember who the hell you are. You are a physical extension of the universe. Your conscious energy, which is always evolving, always changing, always growing. Love is patient, and love is kind. Be patient and be kind by accepting yourself in every moment. Be your own best friend, and remember, you cannot have a happy ending to an unhappy journey. It is about the journey. You've been listening to Reality Spirituality Radio with yours truly, happiness specialist Rebecca Norrington. And happiness, the good news, is a practice skill. Have a conscious week. Thank you for listening. Push this button, push that button, hold on. One of these days I'll have a producer, blah, 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 but I don't have it now.
Yeah. Oh, it's time to get real. Oh, yeah. It's a new experience. Reality Spirituality. Yeah, keep your ears open for this one, man. Reality Spirituality. You got a question for RLN? Reality Spirituality. Yeah, it's time to get some answers, baby. Reality Spirituality. Oh, now we get real. Reality Spirituality. Yeah, it's time to get down. Reality Spirituality. Yeah, you gonna feel good now.